Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me commend the administration for embracing an unlimited liability for economic damages flowing from an offshore rig spill, at least for deep water development. I have been advocating we need to lift the cap, and I'm going to amend my legislation to pursue unlimited liability, certainly in this regard. But I think we disagree about the question of retroactivity, and I want to ask Mr. Pirelli, under the law, not what BP has said, just so I get this straight, under the law, BP has, beyond all of the natural resources cleanup and all of those efforts, which I understand they will pay for, but after that, when there is liability, under the law right now, they only have a $75 million liability cap. Is that correct, yes or no?
I wouldn't characterize it that way, Senator. There is a cap, but it is conditioned on a number of things, including there has to be no gross negligence, no violation of any safety, operational, or construction regulations. So there are many circumstances in which the cap would not apply at all. But in addition, there are certainly other federal statutes at issue, as well as state law that could be brought into play.
Well, then why would we have put a $75 million liability cap if all of these other elements could expose you unlimitedly?
Well, OPA, when it was enacted, among other things, for example, increased penalties under the Clean Water Act, as well as expressly left state law remedies available.
Well, in the absence of those exemptions that you described, they would have a $75 million liability cap.
If under OPA, if those exceptions didn't occur, there would be a $75 million liability cap, as I indicated. Now, state law would still be available.
Has BP entered into a consent agreement with the Department of Justice to agree to, as they have verbalized and as the administration has said that they have verbalized, has BP entered into a consent agreement to be liable for above the $75 million cap?
Not as of today.
Have they give you any written assurances that, in fact, they will be liable for above the $75 million cap?
I believe they've provided the written assurances that they provided to the Cabinet Secretary, Secretaries Napolitano and Secretary Salazar, and as you know, at least the chairman I know made such statements to some congressional committees.
Well, I'd like to see if the department has a copy, or if not, Mr. Hayes, I'd like to see what was written. What's the nature of the language of BP's commitment? Because Exxon said all of these, many of these same things during the Exxon Valdez, and then they litigated all the way to the Supreme Court. It took 20 years, and individuals fell off along the way who were damaged simply because they could not sustain it. Let me ask you, Mr. Pirelli, as Senator Murkowski suggested, is unlimited liability available under state law for the spill? Section 1018 of OPA seems to allow state liability beyond federal caps for oil discharges, but it says, quote, within such state. Would a spill like this in federal waters be considered a discharge within a state, allowing increased state liability?
Well, I think certainly a significant amount of damage to state coastlines and within a certain distance of the coastline would be damage to that state. I think there will be out on the outer continental shelf, the rules may be different, but certainly there will be significant damages that a state might be able to pursue to its coastline.
But there is no question that this is a discharge not within a state but in the waters of the United States, in federal waters. Is that correct?
That's where the initial discharge occurs, but there's no question, I think, as we see every day, that there's tremendous damage being done to the coastline.
Well, I have no disagreement with that, but my point is that when we go to state liability, it is a litigious process, assuming that BP wants to be litigious along the way, and ultimately there are no guarantees. So if we in fact believe that either between the exceptions that you stated may exist, we don't know whether they're pertinent to this particular incident, or BP's statements that they are going to accept unlimited liability, I don't see what the reticence is to lift to the unlimited liability, certainly in deep water dredging. Let me ask you one other question. The Inspector General of the Department of the Interior is soon releasing a report that describes regulators allowing at MMS to allowing company officials to fill out inspection forms in pencil, company officials, which inspectors would, quote, write on top of the pencil and ink and turn in completed forms. This is just the latest in a series of allegations leveled at MMS. Some of these have been referred to U.S. attorneys, and they have passed on it. Is the Justice Department going to look at these incidents and determine whether there is prosecutions that should be leveled?
Senator, I can't speak about this particular instance, but if we get a referral from the Inspector General at the Department of Interior, we will take a serious look.
Well, Mr. Hayes, do you intend to make a referral of the Inspector General's report to the Department of Justice?
We have just received this draft report from the IG last night, and I expect the Secretary will do exactly what he did when he came into office in January 2009 on the heels of the IG investigations in Lakewood, Colorado. He specifically referred everything to the U.S. Attorney, even though that particular investigation had already been processed by the previous administration. In this case, the Secretary issued a press release this morning making it clear that he intends to aggressively evaluate these activities, all of which occurred under the prior administration. But he intends to aggressively look into the individuals involved and to consider prosecution, termination, whatever is appropriate.
Well, I respect what the Secretary has done in the ethics reforms that he has instituted. I do hope that there is appropriate referrals to the Justice Department, because only when we act seriously will the regulators understand that you can't ultimately be cozying up to the industry and doing what they want and putting us all at risk. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.